Alright, this is the last extension of the Intro to Revit series, or Part C. So what we're going to be doing in this lesson is we're going to get some renders to make this whole model look photorealistic on both the inside and outside. What we're going to also be doing is taking our floor plans and we're going to put them into a sheet so it is to scale with the complete title block. Okay, so let's actually begin with the renders. Now, in order to actually do a render to make this model look photorealistic or appear very, very much lifelike, what we're going to be doing is going to the main floor on our floor plans. From there, what I plan to do is grab a camera to capture which parts it is that we want to sort of, I guess, encompass or frame or crop. So from there, I'm going to go to the View tab. And then from there, I'm going to go into the 3D section view and press the little drop-down arrow. And I'm looking for a camera specifically. So one more time, you have to be on the main floor, View tab, 3D view, and we want a camera. Now, as far as the camera goes, I'm just going to kind of click and drag outwards. And there's kind of a cropped view of this. I can use my mouse wheel to scroll out. And I can grab these grips here so I can increase the crop view region. So we're actually identifying and looking at some more of the actual house too. I can also change this button here from a hidden line to a realistic to sort of see what this looks like. Now, just so you know, as soon as I actually dragged a camera in there and looking at my project browser, if I expand that, here's my first camera. It's 3D view 1. And so I'll show you what happens when I put a second camera, a third camera, and so on and so forth in there. So let's go back into our main floor. I'm going to get another angle of this. So let's go back into the View tab. And I'm looking for another camera. Alright, so maybe I might take this from slightly different vista. Okay, great. So again, I can change my crop region quite significantly. Maybe that was too much off to the side. And we want to see the entire roof. Just like that. Alright, so as soon as I drag that additional camera, here it is. Number 2 camera or number 2 3D view. Let's go into realistic. So I can, just like switching from like different levels to the doghouse, I can do the same thing with the 3D view. I can see what's going on here. Now let's do the same thing for inside the house too. So let me go back into the main floor, and what I plan to do is grab another camera, and we're going to put that camera just like that and aim it in the corner. Let's just pull this out a little bit so we can see more of the room. And that's a much, much better view of the room. I might be able to get a bit of the chair in there. And again, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a realistic. Alright, so I got 3 cameras. And what we're hoping for is 2 exterior and 2 interior renders. So one last camera I've got to add. Whoops, didn't quite double click on the main floor. Okay, and I'm going to put a camera right here too. Extend that outwards. When you do put an interior camera in there, make sure that those rays extend all the way through the walls. Okay, that's a much, much better crop photo here. Okay, great. So that's the preview of what the render is going to look like. Now, when we do the rendering, we're going to actually let Autodesk do all the rendering on the cloud. So they have servers located in California, and those servers takes all your materials, takes all the reflections and all the components and all the bits, and what it'll do is it'll produce a finished photograph for you. Now, doing exterior renders is much, much easier than doing interior renders. We're not quite done with some of the settings, but we're going to go ahead with the interior renders first because it's going to probably be the fastest here. So in my 3D views, I plan to go ahead and click on my 3D view 1, and I'm going to start getting this going into a render. So I'm just going to hit escape. I'm in the 3D or camera 1 view render, or 1 perspective. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to go and click on this render in cloud from the View tab. Now you can render inside of Revit architecture if you want, but it's going to tie up your computer and you're not going to be able to do anything else until that render is done, and it also takes quite the length of time. So let's go ahead and render in the cloud. Now as soon as I render in the cloud, I'm going to get this Autodesk sign in. Now if you don't have an account, you can create accounts, but if you have an account, that's the one that you registered with your Edmonton Public School Board email, or perhaps you picked a different one. Since I use a different one, I will put in my email and click next. And I got to put in my password if I remember it. And there it is. Okay, so I'll close this window off. Now you will notice that I'm all logged in, because right over here it went from sign in to my first initial and last name, which is my username. So that's great. So going back into this window right over here, it says render in cloud, step 1, step 2, and step 3. Let's simplify this. Let's just hit continue. And I'm going to accept all the defaults the way that they are. And I'm going to click on the render button. I can have them send me an email notification when it's ready, but it's not going to take long. It'll probably be about 10 minutes for this to all be done, and I can actually look at it and view it from the render gallery cloud. So let's go ahead and click render, and then what we want to do is we want to continue to work in the background, and that box sort of disappears on its own. And you can see right over here it is rendering online, and it's kind of working over here. Let's just close this off here so it's not a distraction. Okay, so let's go to my exterior number 2 render, which is this one. So same steps as before. I'm going to render in the cloud. I don't need to sign in because I'm already signed in. I'm going to go continue, and then I'm going to accept the defaults and click on render, and then we're going to continue to work. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to actually put in lights for interior renders, because if we don't put in lights, everything will be super dark. Yes, there is a artificial sun outside of this clubhouse, but it's just not enough light to make an impact to really illuminate the room space. So what we're going to now do is we're going to go ahead on our main floor, and we're going to maybe put a wall sconce on, or we're going to put a floor lamp. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on my main floor, and I want to put in some lamps here. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to go back into my architecture ribbon. If you guessed components for lights, you're absolutely correct. And then from there, I'm going to click on the load family, and I'm looking for lighting. Again, I have to go up a level. Scrolling down, it's all alphabetized. Here is my lighting. I'm going to use the architectural folder, and I want internal or inside lights. All right, we are going to put in some ceiling lights, but not quite now. Instead, we're going to actually look for a floor lamp. There we go. This one's nice and tall. I'm going to go with this one. And I'll place this right over here. Great. I'm going to go again to components, load family, and now what I want is a sconce. A sconce is just a kind of wall-mounted light. And so when you do have a sconce, it will hang on the wall, and it will kind of give a nice lighting effect. So let's go ahead and add some sconces here. And you'll notice it doesn't work until I actually touch the wall. So we'll put one here, here, and here. That should do it. All right, now for ceiling lights. Ceiling lights are going to be done on the ceiling plans. So the only time that we actually use this ceiling plan is when we're installing ceiling lights, or if we are changing the type of ceiling, which we're going to both do today. Now the reason why I actually collapse this in part A of the video is quite simple, is because a lot of people get confused for floor plans, and they use ceiling plans and they get really confused. So that's why I always minimize this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to expand it, and what we want to do is we want to go to the main floor ceiling. If you look at the ceiling, it's kind of a grid ceiling, and that's okay. We're going to change that, because that grid ceiling is very, very common in commercial office buildings, and that's just like a suspended ceiling with the wall panels. Now, in a house, you don't normally see this type of ceiling unless it's actually in the basement. The main floor or the second floor or other spaces, maybe in a bonus room, will always be like a gypsum board or drywall board. But we're going to leave that for now, but we definitely need this type of ceiling to put in those ceiling lights. Okay, so while I'm in ceiling plan on the main floor, I'm going to go back into components again. I'm going to load the family, and now I'm looking for a ceiling light. All right, so here it is. So I'm going to start dropping them in here. And for whatever reason, in Revit, it only works with this type of ceiling to put in ceiling lights. Not my first choice, but you know, requires a little extra step afterwards. So let's just add some of these in here. Now, another rule in Revit is you only add lights to rooms that you plan to render. So if you have a large mansion and you're only planning to render maybe 3 rooms, only put those lights in those particular rooms. Because if you have lights in Revit through every single room, it will really bog down the rendering, and it could potentially add days, if not weeks onto rendering if it's like a super crazy render with high levels of detail. All right, so now I've got that in there. Now let me go into one of my render views here on the 3D, but before I do that, let's just collapse this down. Don't need this anymore. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to one of my interior camera views. And there it is. So you can see that suspended type ceiling, and now you can actually see the lamp, the ceiling lights, and you can see the wall sconces and more additional ceiling lights. I could have maybe taken a little bit more time and effort to arrange them, but you get the point anyways. Okay, so as far as the ceiling goes, I have to change the ceiling. So you'll notice while I'm in this camera view, if I actually click on this ceiling and highlight it so it's all in blue, by default, this is a compound ceiling. All the tiles are 2 feet by 4 feet. And if I choose a different one, I can actually go to maybe a smaller grid type thing. And you can see that the grid, it doesn't look like it's changed. Well, let me see one more time here. Yeah, maybe it has made it a little smaller, not that I can notice. But the most important part is after I install these ceiling lights, I want to have GWB on metal studs. GWB basically means gypsum board or drywall. All right, and you're going to have to do that for, if you have a multi-story house, you'd probably have to do that for all the different floors separately or different rooms separately. And now you can see I actually have a different type of ceiling. It's still gray, not the most popular color. I mean, heck, I could even go if I want to and go modify and take my paint bucket here. And with regards to a paint color, maybe I will go back to that parking stripe, which I know is beige. There we go. That's better than gray anyways. All right, so that's that part. So I've got that all fixed up. And I'm just going to double check my other interior camera view. And that's good. We don't have that suspended ceiling. So that works really great. Now, normally what I would do is I just go ahead and go view and then just render in the cloud, but I can't do that at this point. Reason why I can't do that is because there's the settings I was talking about earlier. I actually have to turn the lights on and they actually have to appear in the render itself. So instead of going render in cloud, I'm actually gonna go to my render settings right here. When I open up my render settings, I'm gonna increase the quality. We'll maybe go to high. Don't need best. And then here's the important part is the scheme. Under exterior sun only, I'm going to change this to interior sun and artificial. So I got the outside sun and I also have the artificial lights inside. So with these settings changed from high and interior sun and artificial, now I'm actually ready to render in the cloud. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let's accept the defaults here and hit the other render. Okay, great. Now, same thing over here. If I go to my next view and go to my render settings, I got to change this all over again. I'm not too sure why Revit Architecture doesn't remember those settings, but maybe that's something they might do in a future release. So I'm going to change to high, and I'm going to go sun and artificial. And here's something kind of cool too, and this is optional for you to do. Right now the background is going to put in some sky and some few clouds. I can actually change that. I can make it very cloudy, or I could put no clouds, but I can also put an image in here. So maybe if you have a backdrop of mountains and you know where that image is, you could actually click on that image and then you could just browse towards it and insert that. I'm not going to do that. That's something that you can kind of play with on your own. But I'll just leave the settings as they are here and just confirm. Yep. Now we're ready to render in the cloud. Sometimes you get these little error messages that something's missing. Don't worry about that. Just kind of, continue doing so. All right, and I do have a message right over here. There is a render that is complete. So what we can do is we can actually visit the render gallery. So let's go ahead and do that. So So close that off. There we go. And we're going to close this off. All right, so render gallery contains all the images that you've rendered, and it stores them there for future download. So if I want to access the render gallery, right on this button here, I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me to the Autodesk website, which is working kind of slowly today. All right, so you can see all the different past projects that I've actually rendered. Here is the clubhouse, and here is the project. So let's open that up. Okay, so this one right now is in process of rendering, and that's why it is like super grainy. But let's see some of the other finished renders here. So there's the second exterior. Here's the first exterior shot. Here's the one with the TV set. And this one's still in progress, and that's fine. We don't want to cancel the rendering. We want to continue doing that. Let me just go to the exterior render right over here. Okay, so we want to get these pictures in the downloads folder so you can use them afterwards, attach them to assignment, or create a poster, whatever that is. So from the render gallery, I mean, there's two ways you can do this if you want to. You could use a snipping tool. By me hitting the Windows button, I can type in snip. And then what I could do is click on new, and then just drag this box, and as soon as I do that, then it's copied to my clipboard. I can go edit paste or control V and put it into a document if I want to. I like that feature because I think it's fast and it's kind of easy to work with, and it's very practical. So the snipping feature is built right directly into Microsoft Word. I don't know if Apple or Mac has an equivalent. Okay, so the other thing that I can do too is I can just hit the download button here too. So while I'm in actually the my renderings in Autodesk, I can actually click the My Download. I can download this as a JPEG, which is the most popular format. So let me just go do that, and here it is. It is actually in my Downloads folder, and so then I can go ahead and show this in the folder. And there it is. I'm going to rename this though, and I'm just going to say, you know what, actually I'm going to leave that because it's actually very specific. It gives me the file name, the date, and the timestamp. That's awesome. Okay, great. And then I can just take this and, like I said, attach this to assignment. I could print this off. I could put this into another type of doc or format for presentation purposes. All right, so that is exterior rendering at an overview. And remember, the differences between exterior and interior rendering is a bunch of different setting changes for the interior render. All right, so let's go and hop back into Revit. So we're almost done here. The last thing that we actually have to do is we actually have to create a sheet so we can create a plan. And that plan is going to allow us to present it to a, say, contractor who needs all the specific dimensions and all the different types of material types in order to build the structure. Or I could make it a presentation, which is a very simplified type of drawing for a potential client. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to do a presentation drawing. Now, in order to be a presentation drawing, I'm just going to go back onto my floor plan. Again, I don't need my ceiling plan, so hide this if it's expanded. So here's my floor plan. Okay, so with that, I got to actually label these two sides here, and they're going to be called rooms. So going back into architectural, I'm going to look for a room tag. Now you'll notice that the room tag sort of expands to both sides, and I kind of want them to be separate. This isn't usually a problem, so if you have a bedroom that's like separated by a door, you're not going to have this problem. However, if you actually do have kind of an open area that sort of flows, this is going to apply all the way. So I can't quite use the room tag yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a room separator, and that room separator is going to separate the sides of left and right. Now, if you recall in part A, going to hit escape there. If you recall in part A, I said there's going to be a clubhouse for a cool side and the cooler side, whatever that means. So I've got a room tag here, and I'm going to put this roughly in line, and I've got a room tag here, and I'm just going to hit escape. Now let's go ahead and actually do a slow double click and in all capital letters, because that is an architectural drafting standard. So I hit my cap locks. I'm just going to say cool side. And then come like that, and say just slow double click here, all capitals, make sure cap locks is on, and I'm going to say cooler side. I can't say girl side and boy side because, you know, that's so 1940s. We're not doing that. Awesome. And if these are sort of in the walls, what you can also do is you can just sort of, grab the outline. And I'm trying to do that right now and kind of move it a little bit here. There we go, just like that. Now also, because since it's a presentation drawing, what I want to do is I want to put in rough measurements. And that's what kind of these tags are. So I'm just going to come over here and do a slow double click. And I'm going to actually put in rough interior measurements rounded to the nearest foot. So I'm going to go 10 apostrophe by, whoops, I want a lower X for this one, by 10 apostrophe. And there's the rough measurements. And this is great for a presentation drawing in which a client can sort of get a spatial awareness and understand the room types. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to ignore that warning if that pops up. Okay, great. All right, so the next thing I have to do in terms of preparing this for output on a planned document is I'm going to actually have to make all of these walls a solid black fill or hatch. So in order to do that, what I will be doing is going to my properties, and you'll notice by now that you definitely don't want to close off these windows because they're so important. They provide so many options. So now what I plan to do is I'm going to go to, I think it's Visibility and Graphics, and click on that. Yeah, that's the one. So I hit the Edit button. Now next I want to scroll down to the very bottom, and you can see all the different types of structural components. And I want to find walls, and under walls, under the pattern, right here, I'm going to click on this and then do an override. This screen pops up, and just like in AutoCAD, how you can do different hatching with different materials, well, guess what? I can do the same thing. I've got concrete, I've got masonry brick, plastics, you name it. But I do want a solid fill here. So let's just go with a black solid fill. Click on OK. Click on OK, and there everything is a black fill. Now this is a presentation drawing again for a client. Had this been a working drawing with a bazillion measurements for a contractor to come in and build this, these walls would not be filled black. And so that's kind of the difference between your presentation and your working drawings. All right, so that's all ready to go and it's ready for setup. And just a quick note as well too, if I have a house with multiple levels, I actually have to do that visibility graphics for each individual level. Otherwise it will not take effect. All right, so next I want to do is I want to create a sheet. So you'll notice in my browser, if I scroll down here, I have a sheet. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on New Sheet. And the default sheet is massive. It is 30 inches by 42 inches. So roughly under 3 feet by under 4 feet. And I don't have a printer that's big, so we have to change this. So let's go ahead and click on the load button. Now, again, I'm going to have to go up to the very main root of the library folders right over here, which is perfect. And now I plan to scroll all the way at the bottom, and I'm looking for title blocks. So with the title blocks, I just want a regular standard sheet of paper, which is 8.5 by 11 vertical. So let me just go ahead and double click on that. And while this is selected, I'm going to click on OK. All right. So there it is, my title block. It's pre-made, and there's a bunch of information that I have to fill out. Anytime you're working with anything in design, whether it be mechanical, industrial, or architectural, there's 4 basic parts to a title block. It's going to be the title, the name of the person who drew this, the name possibly of the client could also fall under that category, the date, and the scale. But for sure you have to have the title, name, date, and scale. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to go say Mr. Smith is the owner. Okay, project name, we're going to call this Clubhouse. All right. And I mean, kind of says unnamed over here too. I mean, I could, be more specific. Now, one thing I did notice though that I'm doing wrong is I'm not using all capital letters. So that's a mistake. So I got to go back and I got to do this all over again. Again, this is a drafting standard. It's not my rule. It's easy to forget though. All right, today's date is May 5th, 2020. And drawn by, you would have to add your first name or last name. So pretend I'm Bob. And checker, this is going to be me, because guess what? I'm the one who's going to be marking these things. Now this is taking up a little bit of space. You know what? I'm just going to shorten this. Good enough. I don't want that to overlap. There is a way of changing it, but we're not going to get into that. All right, so I've got all the basics of my title block, and you'll notice that's all in capital letters. All right, so now what I have to do is I actually have to grab that main floor plan, and I got to drag it directly into the sheet. All right, and you'll notice right here too, there's a little plus sign for the sheet. So if I ever lose that, I can just expand or collapse that. And again, I can go between main floor, and I can go between sheets, and I can go between all these different views. And hopefully you're kind of comfortable with that right now. Okay, so let's get back into the sheet. So let me just take my main floor. I'm going to left click and hold and drag right here. Okay, so got some problems here. You'll notice that this whole region is way too big for the page. On top of that, you're going to notice that my clubhouse looks way too small on here. And so I need to do a better job of cropping this and scaling this. So with that, I'm going to go from my backyard back onto my main floor by double clicking. And what I'm going to do is increase the scale. Now my scale presently set is 1/8 of an inch is equal to a foot, and I need to change that. So I'm going to change this by clicking on here, and there's a whole bunch of different types of scales. So instead what I'm going to do is maybe go half an inch is equal to a foot in the real world. Let's give that a try. Okay, now I know the lettering goes smaller, and that's not a big deal, because what's actually happening is the actual scale is changing on the object. Let's see how it fits on the sheet though. So let me double click right over here. And, whoops. Let me just zoom out. Okay, that somehow moved. No big deal. I'll move that in the middle. Okay, so I know that the scale is obviously too big because it's, you know, the whole entire structure goes off. All right, so let's go back into my main floor, change the scale one more time. So it's kind of a process where you have to sort of like, you know, try this, doesn't work, try that, go back and forth. Okay, let's go back into the sheets. And again, I have to move this over here because it seems to move. You know, and that's too bad. I'm just going to use my arrow keys, and you'll notice that it's still kind of not quite good enough for the page. So that's fine. Let's go to the main floor. And for sure, we're going to say 1/4 of an inch is that equals a real foot will definitely fit on the page. Let's go check that out one more time and move this back on here. Great. That works. Now, I know some of you are going to have some trees in here, and we're going to talk about what to do with trees. So let me actually just take some of these trees and move them closer so they're actually on the page. This kind of stuff is not usually desirable on a plan view because you're trying to simplify things. So here we are, and you can see that, oh, still not close enough. All right, I'll really make this close here. Okay. Now you can see that the trees are sort of in here, and we're going to deal with that in a bit. One of the things that you can do if you want to is you can hide these trees here. And you should already know how to do that. So if I go into the main floor plan and I click on one of these trees, and if I actually do a hide category and go back into my sheet, oh, you know what? That's still not going to do it. Maybe what you can do is maybe just move the trees off to the side, or better yet, instead what we can do is click on the tree and right click. And I don't like usually showing students this because this is more of a kind of a permanent hide, but we can actually hide the category of trees. When you hide them, it's not temporary, and you can see that they're disappeared from here. Supposedly I ever wanted to get the trees back. I can't do it through here. Actually, I have to do it through the light bulb. And then I have to when the light bulb shows everything in pink is temporarily hidden. Now what I can actually do is I can actually unhide and view the category. Not going to worry about that now. That's just for future reference. You know how to do that. Okay, let's go to the backyard. Okay, so that fits on really nicely, but I still got a problem. This kind of big area space has to be condensed right over here. And also right here, you're going to see that it actually says 0, main floor and 1/4 of an inch is equal to a foot. I need that to actually appear with the drawing, especially if you have multiple levels. So let's actually just talk about this big box here and how to shrink that down. So I'm going to go into main floor, and right beside the glasses here I have this little crop icon with a little light bulb, and as soon as I click on that, it turns on. I'm going to zoom out, and there's that big cropping area that was showing up here. Alright, so I zoomed out for that. So now I plan to really shrink this down. And sometimes this will also hide some trees that you don't want that's visible. Alright, so now let me go back into the backyard. And yeah, just got to shrink it down a little bit more. So let's try this again. So it all fits on the page. Okay, there it is. That all fits on the page, and that looks really good. Let me go back here, and I'm just going to turn off the crop view region. We don't need that to show. There we go. So that all fits in there. Now I'm still missing one thing. It's kind of like that little bubble level. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to put this all the way over here. Now if you want to move this here, just make sure that you click on the white space so nothing is selected. And now I'm just going to grab this and just move this over here. And this is one of the things where if you have multiple levels, that each of these has to correspond with the actual level so somebody can actually see that. Okay, so all I did is make sure nothing was selected, and then I'm just going to click and drag and move this by here, and it contains the scale, and it also fills out the scale right over here, which is a really nice feature. Now this line obviously extends way past here, and I need to fix that. So what I plan to do is I'm just going to zoom out. Now I click on my crop region, and now you'll see these grips show up on either side. So if nothing's selected, I can move this level bubble, but if I click on the crop view, now I can actually just shrink this down so it all fits in there. All right, that is your plan, which is ready to be printed. So if you do decide to print and show a friend, show a neighbor, show a client, show a family member, whatever, what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, we're going to print, we're going to select a printer, but it's really important that you go under Properties. And what we want to do is we want to change this icon right here so it's going to print in landscape. And again, I don't know why Revit Architecture does that, but we're going to click it so we actually, it's in portrait, and it also follows the same orientation of the actual plan that we created. And now I can actually click on OK, and it's going to get fed to my printer. Oh, it says no view, no sheet selected. Okay, so I actually have to go probably current window. There it is. Now I can click on OK. And it's going to just get sent to my printer right now, and then I can distribute that or show somebody. So this was a very, very long lesson, and so I encourage you guys to have fun with it and be creative. You don't have to do exactly what I've done for your own clubhouse. You can change different proportions, but the steps will be the same nonetheless. So have fun with this activity, and the next one that we're going to be doing is a lake cabin with a detached or separated garage, and so that will be a fun project for you.